is just fantastic.
Hello, sorry for no videos yesterday, bit burnt out. We're going to work our way back in carefully with a more casual visual, so just listen to what I have to say, I guess. Although there will be some articles and a video, because I love me some climate activism. Actually, I'll correct that to be what it actually is. What I really love is some middle-class toffs looking down upon the oikory by performing their own virtue-signalling attempt at activism that is in effect a form of vandalism, because that's how we really stand out. But because they know they're not really going to accomplish anything by doing it, it is exactly a virtue signal, because they've got sod all else to offer, and because activism is an occupation. I love this. Just Stop Oil achieved so little in their heyday, so did Extinction Rebellion and all the other ones before, names of which I have actually forgotten. Just Stop Oil was the more notable and led to so many people proving just how middle class and white trash they really were. Coming from money, looking down upon the oikory, holding up traffic, causing problems for vital emergency services on things like the Dartford crossing, or protesting on motorways, leading to changes in the law to restrict one's ability to protest, which I disagree with fundamentally. The right to protest must always be accepted. If it is illegal, then you're clearly rubbing the right people up the right way, because they need to sometimes be kept in check. Although in this instance, the climate activism is somewhat ironic, because it was later found that many of those that travel to these protests do so by using cars. It's okay for me, but not for you. It's okay for me to have masses of traffic behind where I'm protesting, because then their cars are stationary but running, because UK law says they have to be running, and we're just generating more greenhouse gases from your sedentary position. But we're helping the planet, everyone. No new licenses for oil and gas. Okay, that's cute. Governments, regardless of political leaning, are not going to enforce anything to help you, because they know damn well to do it involves tax, and they play a different game to you. You play within the relative field, they play within the optics field. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm kidding. Optics is how politics has always worked. They will do what appeases the larger audience base, and then they'll implement policies that they would rather do while they still have you on their side for a time. In the context of what many of these climate activist groups are trying to accomplish, they do cite sources, but then they have to sensationalize based on trajectory and prediction. Kind of like a doomsday clock, but they've all been proven wrong so far as well. To further prove the middle-class credentials of many of those that are climate activists, you have art galleries and museums that take the brunt of it. I found it somewhat amusing when they went after dinosaur bones, considering many of them were using cars that are run by what was produced from their decay. Now, on Twitter, the Mona Lisa was trending. If you don't know what the Mona Lisa is, play Assassin's Creed 2 or watch the Da Vinci Code. It's 100% totally legit and fact. And I mentioned those explicitly for those who can't be asked to go and look up Wikipedia or something. It is arguably the most, or one of the most famous paintings on the planet. Hell, if you're a 40k fan, it even gets referenced in Warhammer 40,000 as being a part of the personal collection of Malkador the Sigillite. This painting is so famous, it is one of the most protected as well. It has to be. As long as it's not restored like that Jesus painting of old that looked hilarious when finished, you're golden really. It is celebrated and it is held quite highly. Many go to see this every year. Many go to see the works of Picasso and any other painter. I don't know, whoever draws for the Beano. Understandably, when you are a middle-class white trash climate activist, you are going to have the Mona Lisa on your hit list, your shit list, your turd flinging list, because like a good little chimp, you need to mark your territory. Kind of like ownership in Red Dwarf. Once it's licked by cat, it belongs to cat. In this, once you've thrown some random stuff at the Mona Lisa is now Sherminated because of you, even though I've earlier mentioned it has protections. Now would be a good part, after a rather lengthy TED talk, you're all welcome, to play the clip that was doing its rounds on Twitter. I will now though accompany it with some tweets. Libs of TikTok. Climate activists threw soup at the Mona Lisa in the Louvre Museum today. Employees responded by holding up curtains to block visitors from seeing. These climate, that word, need to be arrested and given long prison sentences. This needs to stop. Riley Games. Ah yes, defacing the Mona Lisa with soup will immediately make everyone stop burning and developing fossil fuels. Great idea, lock them up. Rita Panahi. How are these climate cultists getting so close to masterpieces armed with paint, soup, hammers, etc.? This time they've attacked the Mona Lisa, jail. And culture critic, soup being thrown at the Mona Lisa by climate zealots. Security just sits idly and watches. Once again, the sad truth is that this is being allowed to happen by the gallery. This has happened enough times now for there to be a rapid response protocol, yet nothing ever stops them. These institutions are no longer fit to be custodians of these masterpieces. Well, here's the video. We'll talk about what they've said in a moment.
On va vous demander d'évacuer.
On est riposte alimentaire et on demande la mise en place de la sécurité sociale de l'alimentation durable.
So I have, firstly, an opinion. Long prison sentences won't work on these idiots. We know this. Under UK law, this wouldn't fly for even a second. They'll get a slap on the wrist, a fine which their dads will pay, and a suspended sentence or community service. Riley Gaines is quite right that nobody is going to support them for throwing soup at a glass pane or at the Mona Lisa in the direction of the Mona Lisa. If in France, French law states that doing this is worthy of a prison sentence, then of course they get prison. And as far as the response from the security goes, it is a damning statement about the state of the relationship between that of security and the police, where the security are unwilling to step in knowing there is a chance they themselves will get done in, lose their jobs, possibly get cancelled by those losers, those cliche losers who thought it wise to waste soup. Many of these people do this and then moan about others not being able to feed their children because of the cost of living crisis. You do realise though, if we suddenly stopped using fossil fuels, the cost of living would go up even higher, right? Millions would die. It was recognised by, was it the UN or the World Economic Forum, that tens of millions would have to die, and that wouldn't include those who would die or perish. That's probably a better word. Perish. Because of inability to access certain medications. This isn't the smartest, is it? As far as the security go, they are hired to do a job. They really are. But they are not allowed to do their job in many countries, France and England included. But at the same time, they are acutely aware unless damage was done to the glass itself that was providing the protection of the Mona Lisa, they don't have to respond all that quickly. The obvious counter to that is, though, they should still respond. Not allow these fools that much airtime to air their grievance while using the Mona Lisa's name for the clout they need to get that traction on social media for that relevancy. This is not a Just Stop Oil group after all, but it is another climate activism group, but this time in France, because they've done so well in the United Kingdom. Considering the sway of politics in France, they're so heavily divided between that of, for example, Emmanuel Macron and then a very far-right party opposing them. It is quite impressive to me, even based on how their political system is voted on. It is impressive to me that they think this beyond social media will yield anything in the way of an outcome that could benefit them as a group. It got eyes on them, there's a benefit, but what else do they do beyond that? We've seen in the United Kingdom, many of these climate groups have been backed by very wealthy celebrities or people who have made their wealth from petroleum and then gone on to start donating to political parties instead, believing that that would accomplish more than backing the, group that refuses to play ball in the political space. The relevancy they seek is fleeting. So what is the point? The point really is, oh look at me, I look good, don't I? Along with, oh father, can I have a cuddle? Which is always what the problem is. A little more context is vitally important concerning the group in question called Riposte Alimentaire, which does translate to food response. This is a climate activist group. This comes not long after French farmers have been protesting for days now, some of whom firing manure at the police, leaving manure at the tax offices because low wages, rising costs, and increased regulations are harming the farming industry. From an agricultural stance, I took great issue with the EU because their common agricultural policy actually harms the ecology and the regeneration efforts to maintain and be able to sustain and grow in the farming industry. With these issues ongoing, it is unlikely to change unless the EU realise it affects all nations because each individual country has its own ecology. For example, the UK's soil is typically too acidic. Basic biology could have told you that. So we cannot abide, or could not abide when we were members of the EU, the agricultural policy knowing it harmed our ecology. Each individual member state needs to have its own set of rules and governance, almost as if being a country should take precedent over that nonsense. The novel concept of running to the painting with black screens in a bid to block the public's view and asking the visitors to evacuate the room. It's a quaint way of handling the situation, but let's face it here, no. Farmers have been setting up blockades all over the country to slow traffic to protest better pay for their produce. Two different instances, but vitally important because, in retrospect, if you did more for the climate, the farmers would be harmed even further. You could argue, but more fertile land to grow. No, that wouldn't be how this works at all. And they'll need something to power their tractors, won't they? Now, the articles I'm going to link down below include the farmers as well as the protesters because they are connected. And it is worth adding, this isn't the first time the Mona Lisa has been targeted. In 2022, a cake was smeared on the covering with bystanders claiming a man dressed as an old lady jumped out of a wheelchair before trying to smash the protective glass. Because if you have time to admire art, you have time to care about the importance of the world. No lives matter, everyone. That will solve the problem for you. I should add, for the sake of additional transparency, the reason that Riposte Alimentaire, Food Counterattack, have been more involved and are actually in alignment with the farmers is because they believe that food needs to be integrated into the general social security system, thereby ensuring a socialist utopia that everyone has access to all basic amenities. Their basic needs required. Rations, if you will. Whoever heard that before? Seizing the means of production, I guess, could be argued, or ensuring that a guaranteed resource is there. You have countries now currently trying out 4-day work weeks. You have many systems that guarantee an income, a basic one akin to a benefit system, but without the additional loopholes, something which could not be implemented in the UK because our economy would actually crash. Both would actually cause it to crash, to be honest. Once you go down the political wing of these discussions, it gets quite fascinating, and I'm half tempted to do a video solely on BitChute and Rumble, so it's the same video on those two platforms, talking about the political side of this. There's a cultural side too when you include France, but let's face it, it's just red tape and white flags, and a somewhat entitled, arrogant little idiot in charge who needs to get his bromance on with Justin Trudeau Castro. Now, I did go and look up Just Stop Oil because I thought it'd be interesting to throw this in here as well, but I'm not going to bother. Not because they're not worth our time, but because I believe they could go in an exhibition of stupid people on Thursday instead. Because they're still active, I don't know how, but they still are. This one, being newer, deserves to be on its own. Do let me know what you think about the idea of having a food card worth €150 a month to be used on food as part of a generalized system of helping everyone. By the way, that's to citizens. Therefore, I would surmise the more children you have, the more food cards you get. I've heard something about that before as well. It led to a massive shake-up in the UK benefit system because of it.